This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Another edition of Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. Of course, it's a Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg. I don't know if we have any Eagles stuff to talk about with Dave coming up in about 15 minutes from now, because there's just been a dearth of Eagles conversation today. There's just nothing going on this week. I am obviously kidding. So we'll get to all that with Dave coming up at 6:15 for a Weinberg Wednesday. Plus, the latest Eagles injury report is up right now at 97.3ESPN.com. Got some starters. They're limited at practice. They're not out. They're limited. Don't get alarmed, though. Fletcher Cox is a DNP, but it's for rest. So no new injuries for him or anything. You can check out the full list right now on 97.3ESPN.com. What's not on the injury report specifically for the Eagles is Isaac Seumalo, who was activated from the injured reserve list. His practice window is activated for 21 days. He is practicing, so got some good signs for the Eagles. Some good news for the Birds as we get ready for them to play the Giants. Of course, you can hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. This Sunday, coverage begins with Merrill Reese, Mike Quick on the call. Of course, Billy Schweim in the locker room at 10 a.m. will get you the pregame show leading you up to Eagles football. Of course, I'm, tongue-in-cheek about the Eagles because yesterday we talked about Brett Favre, what Brett Favre had to say about the Eagles. And we know that Brett Favre and Doug Pederson have a very long personal history. And Doug Pederson was asked not once, not twice, but 3 different times about the Favre questions. Because, to be perfectly frank with you, Doug Pederson's answers were frankly puzzling. He didn't really give an answer the first 2 times. So finally, he got pressed on the question, and he had to finally answer. And before I replay for you what Doug said, Doug Pederson, I don't think was avoiding the question, okay? I know some people on social media are trying to say that. I know some people on social media are trying to say that it's a big conspiracy that, Doug is feeding Brett Favre information, and that's why he's saying this and that, and that Doug has to support Carson Wentz and blah, blah, blah. I get all of that, all right? And frankly, those of you who think that, I think you're completely misreading the situation. I think Brett Favre was asked a question. He gave an honest answer. He gave his opinion. Has Doug Pederson been the most media-savvy head coach in NFL history? Absolutely not. Doug Pederson stumbles over himself plenty of times in press conferences. Just go back to his first year as the Eagles head coach. Doug Pederson was such a sloppy individual when it came to the press conference his first year. As a producer, I actually compiled basically a montage of Doug Pederson tripping over himself his first year doing press conferences. So I'm very well aware that Doug is not the cleanest individual, the most polished individual when it comes to a press conference. But even for an unpolished, typically very honest, very straightforward guy like Doug Pederson, his answers to asking about the Favre stuff is puzzling. And when he finally got pressed by Rob Maaddi to clarify what he said, it took him till the 3rd time to even say this.
No, Carson's our guy. Carson's our draft pick. Carson's the guy that is going to carry us and lead this football team. And listen, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Those aren't my words. Those aren't Howie's words, Jeffrey's words. Those are his words. I mean, I respect that opinion. Whatever he wants to say, that's fine, and we're going to remain friends. It doesn't bother me one way or the other. All I know is that Carson Wentz is our guy.
And that's the problem. Doug had to be pressed to the 3rd time to get that out. Because despite what Doug and the Eagles think, perception is reality. You got to put your foot down like that the first time you're asked. And I think that's where Doug the Eagles organization, Carson Wentz, all of them don't fully get the reality that it doesn't matter if something's not true. If you don't put forward a certain presentation, people are going to assume certain things. By the way, Carson Wentz was also asked about it today as well. Here is the full of what Carson Wentz answered and how the press conference ended.
Hey, Carson, I'm wondering if you saw what Brett Favre said on ESPN about if the Eagles should have stuck with Nick Foles instead of going forward with you, and if so, what your thoughts were.
Did not. So maybe you can enlighten me, or at the end of the day, it's really whatever. I mean, everyone has their opinion, so I don't know.
Okay. Thanks, Carson.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Get the question, doesn't really know how to answer it, boom, press conference over. Because as we have discussed here on 97.3 ESPN, Carson Wentz doesn't pay attention to the press clippings. He doesn't focus on the media. He doesn't spend his time consuming that information. And this is where the naivete and the, for lack of a better term, ignorance of the Eagles and their franchise gets in the way of honest and objective conversation. I get that Doug Pederson and Carson Wentz and the Eagles didn't say these things. I get that it was Brett Favre who said it. But when Doug Pederson gets asked not once, but twice, but three times the same question until he finally gives a forceful answer, that's a problem. I mean, just listen to how Les Bowen, who's covered the Eagles for a long time, has dealt with a lot of situations. This is Les Bowen following up on the first question to Doug Pederson, trying to get some clarity on what was actually Doug's response.
Just to clarify on the Brett Favre business, you said you respect his opinion, but his opinion in this instance was that you should have kept Nick Foles and gotten rid of Carson Wentz. I'm assuming that's not your opinion?
I respect Brett's opinion. He's entitled to his opinion, and that's fine, and I'll leave it at that.
See, that's where the naivete, the blissfulness, the living in your own bubble gets in the way of everything, okay? It doesn't matter that what Favre said is right or wrong. It doesn't matter that Favre and Doug are friends. It doesn't matter of all that, Favre is the guy that Wentz idolized growing up. The problem and what's wrong here is that the Eagles are mismanaging perception. For any of you out there who have ever done anything when it comes to public relations or marketing or advertising, the message that you put forth is everything. We just had to go through months on end of political ads on top of political ads, and we're all being inundated with all these messages. And if you never did a single ounce of your own research, all you know is the political ads you saw on television or heard on the radio or saw online. You don't know anything else. And the problem is that because of the world we live in, the only thing people know is the last thing they read or heard. So for the Eagles, it's not about, well, we didn't say that, or as Doug Pederson said, well, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and I didn't say that. It doesn't matter. What matters is that somebody said it, and now it's on you to say, I don't agree with it. Not to get there and say, well, I respect his opinion. He's allowed to have his opinion. We know he's allowed to have his opinion, Doug. Come on, Doug. Wake up. Perception is reality. And if people perceive that you are not being forceful in your defense of your $100 million franchise quarterback, it's a bad look. Anytime anybody does anything anymore, we're going to criticize it, scrutinize it, and pick it apart and run the Zapruder film and try to figure out who shot Kennedy, okay? That's just where the world is. Just because you don't think like that, Doug or Howie or Jeffrey Lurie or anybody else, doesn't mean the rest of the world isn't. And if you're not willing to handle reality and work through perception to try to make sure your message is clear, then people are going to be parsing all day long. What do you mean? What did he really say? And when Carson Wentz says, I don't know what he's talking about. And then you end the press conference after that, it's just not a good look. And for an organization like the Philadelphia Eagles that is as run as well as it is, today was not a good day at the PR office, to say the least, by all parties involved. 609-403-0973 on the PlaySugarHouse.com text board to get on the conversation. 609-403-0973 here on 97.3 ESPN. Weinberg Wednesday with Dave Weinberg coming up next. We'll get more into the Eagles and everything going on in Philadelphia football as we get ready for the Giants game this Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN. You can hear all the action. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick on the call here on your home for Eagles football and the NFL all year long. 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Your chance to go check out the latest Eagles injury report right there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app and 97.3ESPN.com.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, the Weinberg Wednesday. So we'll talk more Eagles and maybe get a little bit of the Masters as well with Dave Weinberg. He joins us each and every week here on the Boardwalk Auto Hotline. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Dave, I know it's a bit of a rainy day outside, so how did you handle a day without being on the beach?
Actually, I got in some golf this morning before the rain came, so yeah, it was all good. It was sunny for a little while, just enough to get 18 holes in.
Just enough. There you go. See, even Dave Weinberg comes to the table glass half full. There you go. So, Dave, obviously, I don't know if there's anything Eagles for us to talk about because of how crazy the week has been, but I will start with, how do you think the last 48 hours have been, at least in terms of perception? Because my belief is that after what Brett Favre said yesterday, which people can argue if he's right or if he's wrong, I don't think he said anything that's really that ridiculous, but it's his opinion. He's allowed to have his opinion, but the way the Eagles handled it was Doug basically with his non-specific answers and Carson Wentz just pleading, I don't know anything. It's just, isn't there something to be said about the perception of something more so than whether it's right or wrong?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, Doug and Brett are very close, dating back to their days in Green Bay together. So it was a little bit surprising. I guess he respects Brett's opinion to somewhat, but you would think that he would have maybe been a little bit more emphatic in defending Carson, putting to rest the on. Well, it's never going to rest. It's never going to go away, but at least being a little more
a little more forceful,
and that Wentz is your starter, and Nick's not here, and we thank Nick for what he's done, but we got to move on, and but he didn't. He kind of like left it twisting in the wind again.
It just seems like, and I don't know if it's just because of Doug's long relationship with Brett, but it just felt like it took Doug 3 times for someone to get a forceful answer out of him, and part of Doug's answer is, listen, I didn't say it, Howie didn't say it, Jeffrey Lurie didn't say it, but it's almost like he doesn't understand that it's not about who said it, it's about the fact that you've been asked multiple times about this kind of stuff, and your answers are frankly kind of weak, and it's like they don't understand how that's perceived by the rest of the world.
Yeah, you're right there. He probably should have just put an end to it. And just, emphatically, like I said, Nick was great. Nick's gone. He's not coming back. This is Carson's team. We've gave him $128 million to be our franchise quarterback. So, end of story. But yeah, it's never going to go away just because what Nick did here, and we're winning a Super Bowl, and then his 4-2 record in the playoffs, and there is a sizable contingent of people out there that believe that what Brett said, that they got rid of the wrong quarterback, but that's in the past now. You just have to move on, and I hope that Wentz will be finally be acceptable to the coaching advice that he's been given, and turn his game around a little bit.
And of course, a part of that starts again this week. They play the Giants again. The Giants, you could argue, had multiple opportunities to win that last game, but the Eagles were lucky to come out with that win. So, in your mind, what has to change this week for the Eagles to make sure they get the job done this time and there's no and ifs or whats?
I don't know if they're going to get the job done, but Miles Sanders would be a big boost if he's able to play. They just haven't been able to establish that consistent running game. Part of that might be Doug's fault for not sticking with the running game. But priority number one, as it is every week, is for Carson Wentz to take care of the football. He can't keep making these mistakes that he's been making, leading the league in interceptions, leading the league in turnovers. He just has to be able to I don't want to see him turn into a game manager per se, but he does have to be a little bit more conservative. If the throw's not there, don't force it. If the run's not there, don't try and take off. Just, protect the football, throw it away when you have to. And if he can do that, which is easier said than done with him, because he seems to have a very high opinion of himself as to his abilities and his insistence that he's going to maintain the same aggressive style, which isn't necessarily the best thing for the team. But, if he can do that, then the Eagles will be able to make a run at this thing. But if not, then I think it's just more trouble down the line.
You mentioned the game manager, and I just have to wonder sometimes, because you mentioned Wentz's own, belief in his abilities, and I've called it, Wentz's ego getting in the way of doing what's right for the team.
Yep.
I think about how, the guy who's considered, if not the greatest, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, Tom Brady, spent a good portion of his career basically being a game manager, and then when his team needed him to step up and have those huge moments, he would. And I just feel like sometimes we treat the concept of a game manager maybe not appropriately, because to me, I'd rather you not put the team in a position to lose the game than go out there and try to be a hero all the time. And I feel like Wentz in his fifth year now can maybe take some cues from early years Tom Brady, where Tom was never trying to put his team in a position to lose the game.
Yeah, and even I hate to keep bringing it up again, but Nick was the same way. He took what the defense gave him. He didn't make too many mistakes. Didn't take too many chances once he thought they were there. And for whatever reason, it just was. I don't know if Carson's trying to make up for lost time, or just trying to assert himself as the franchise quarterback. Contract aside, I guess there are some people there that just don't see him that way, and he seems to be willing to do whatever it takes, good or bad, to become the guy that everybody was envisioned him being when they made him the second overall pick and gave him the big contract. But you're right. He has to be able to pump the brakes a little bit when he has to, and stop trying to make every play when some of them aren't there.
Dave Weinberg joining us here for a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Also check out his Extra Point columns over at 97.3ESPN.com. Another thing, Dave, this week with the Eagles, Isaac Seumalo, he's been activated from IR so he could practice. Of course, the last time we saw guys activated were Jalen Reagor, Dallas Goedert. They practiced all week. They ended up playing that Sunday. So I believe the expectation is that Isaac Seumalo would be good to go as long as he practices all week. So with that assumption in mind, what kind of confidence do you have in the Eagles if the offensive line this Sunday and moving forward is Jason Peters, Isaac Seumalo, Jason Kelce, Nate Herbig, and Lane Johnson from left to right?
It's better, I guess. To be honest with you, I don't know why Jordan Mailata's on the bench. I think I would have maybe, I don't know. I think the easier thing would have been to move Peters to right guard, but Nate's been playing pretty decently as well. So I guess that's the line that they were envisioning for themselves somewhat in the beginning of the year, and at least after Brandon Brooks got hurt. But Lane's injury seems to be something that's going to be lingering for the rest of the year. He just can't seem to make it through a game or two without suffering a relapse and limping back off to the sidelines. And Jason, same thing. He hasn't missed. He finds a way to get back out there, but he's clearly not the same left tackle that he was. So I I get it's better to have Isaac out there. He's a pretty good player, but I don't know that it's going to make a huge difference.
You know, you mentioned Mailata, and I'm with you. I'm a believer in if a guy's playing well, keep playing him until he doesn't play well anymore. And it just feels like it was almost like a, hey, man, thanks for the 4 weeks, but we're paying Jason Peters X number of dollars, so why don't you go to the bench? Because, you know, we're more worried about Jason Peters, you know, feelings and ego than we are about putting the best players on the field. It just feels so bizarre the way they're handling this whole thing.
Yeah, I still can't understand why Jason's still on the team. I mean, no offense to him, he's had a great career, one of the leaders in the locker room, but he's clearly not the same player. And you're right, you have to go with who's playing the best, who deserves to be in there, not necessarily who's making the most money. And Jordan, he hasn't been a Pro Bowler by any stretch, but he seems to be getting better by the game, and it seems to be better. It would be better for them to just let him grow and mature and improve at that position rather than sticking Jason back out there, you know, for a quarter or a game, and then he's going to get hurt again, and then you're right back to where you started. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, something that does make sense, at least a little bit, is we're finally in November, which means we have MAC football during the week, we have college football all weekend, but also a big part of your weekend, I'm sure, is going to be the Masters. And
you're absolutely correct. Yes.
You know, first of all, I got to ask you, you know, is there a part of you that's looking at the Masters and just going in and saying, you know what, I'm completely open-minded because this is going to be way different than any of the Masters I've ever seen? Because, you know, my big thing is there's going to be no patrons. And a huge part of the Masters, at least for me, is that I'm not as big of a golf guy as you are, but as much more of a, maybe the next stage down below, as you know, much more passionate you are about golf than I am. But to me, what makes the Masters is the roar of the crowd coming around the bend. You know, you guy makes a putt, you can hear the crowd roaring 2 holes over. And without that, I feel like this is going to be a completely different dynamic than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, it's going to be a completely different atmosphere. You're right. And you're also right that the patrons are what makes the Masters such a special event. Like you mentioned, the roar of the crowd, and you get players really feed off of that, and they know when someone else has made a great shot or sank a clutch putt, and just by the reactions of the crowd. So that, you know, that plays that's a factor in the way they play their rounds. And now it's just going to be all about golf and how they can handle the course. It's going to be much different this year. It's going to be a lot wetter, I think. So it's going to probably favor the bigger hitters. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out.
You know, I wouldn't say that I dislike Bryson DeChambeau, but I feel like this whole year has revolved way too much around him and the fact that he got bigger and the protein shakes and the whole, you know, I have a mathematical formula that I'm using at these golf courses, everything. It's just kind of like, all right, can somebody else go out there and just win this tournament? At least for me, because I'm just like, I'm tired of him. I got Bryson fatigue this year.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It seems like every year there's one guy that really comes on strong, and then he's supposed to be the next big thing. I mean, it was Jordan Spieth a couple of years ago. It was Brooks Koepka last year. Now it's Bryson, and like his innovative approach to things. You know, I don't dislike the guy. I think he plays a little bit too slow for my liking, but you know, more power to him. He's figured out a way to play the way that best suits him, and you know, he's had a lot of success. But this is not golf. Is just not a game where you can pretty much dominate for long stretches. I mean, Tiger Woods did, of course, but generally there's always a guy that comes out of the shadows that you know, contends when you don't expect it. So I guess Bryson is the favorite just on the fact of his past performances this year, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if someone else gets that green jacket.
Now, the intermediate, as myself, the name I keep going back to, because I'm no golf aficionado, but the name that I keep going back to is Xander Schauffele, because he was there in it on Sunday last year. So, and he's had, from what I can tell, a solid year this year. So, to me, I would think he should be one of the favorites to win it this year.
Yeah, actually, if I'm betting on it, I'm betting on him. Well, a couple other guys too, but yeah, he's one of the guys that I think is certainly proven to be capable of winning this. There's a lot of guys. But I mean, there's always guys that come out of the woodwork. Plus, there's always the traditional favorites. I wouldn't expect. I think Brooks Koepka is healthy now, so I would probably put him in there. Dustin Johnson, of course. I don't think. Well, I mean, personally, I would really like to see Phil Mickelson turn on that magic again, but I just don't think he can. John Rahm got 2 holes in 1 this week, so maybe he's a contender too. Tiger, I don't think. I just don't think he's ready to defend that title. But it's gonna be wide open. You're right. Xander is certainly one of the legitimate contenders there.
Yeah, Xander's plus 600 to win. Not bad odds if somebody wants to throw those bets down here in New Jersey.
There you go.
So now, how are you going to formulate your weekend, though? Because, Saturday, traditional college football, Saturday, Sunday, Eagles on at 1 o'clock. So how are you going to fit the Masters in around everything else?
Well, I will probably the Masters will probably take center stage for me, and then I'll fit everything else around that, even the Eagles, believe it or not. I know. I'll probably spend the majority of the time on Sunday, checking out the Eagles and Giants. But Masters is, the final round. I can't not be riveted by that. So yeah, it's going to be the Masters are going to be center stage for me, and then I'll just pick college football and the NFL around that.
Now, does the time of the Masters, how does that impact it? Because I know that for television, they have a little bit of a different time than they usually have for the final tee times.
How so? I'm sure you mean.
Starting a little earlier this year because there's no patron, so the times are a little earlier.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's going to make it more difficult, especially when the Eagles are concerned. Usually, you could just well, you don't have to do it because it's in April, but usually, in this kind of scenario, you would normally just pay attention to the Eagles game and then maybe turn on the Masters for like the last 4 or 5 holes. But if you're right, if it's earlier this year, then I guess the Masters. I'm just going to have to check out the Eagles when I can.
I mean, I don't expect you to be like someone like some of these other people that have like 5 TVs or like 2 different devices running in a TV.
No.
Yeah, there's at some point technology is just ruining our ability to enjoy anything, in my opinion. But
I mean, I have a few TVs, but I'm not. They're not all in one room.
Well, I'm glad to hear that at least. At least you're not a slave to television like half the world is. Not that I condemn them, but everyone's got a thing, and anyway. That's a different conversation for a different day. He's Dave Weinberg. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at DaveWeinberg19. Also, check out Extra Point columns at 973ESPN.com. He joins us each and every week here for a Weinberg Wednesday. And, of course, don't forget his podcast, Tequila in Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. And as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Dave, always appreciate the time and the conversation.
I really enjoyed it, Josh, and enjoy the Masters this weekend.
I'll do my best. I got my money on Xander, so we'll see if that pays off or not. But that's just me. Josh Hennig here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get back to your text in just a bit, 609-403-0973. Don't forget, Game Night being brought to you by weightliftinghq.com. Look, folks, I've talked many times about my own personal passion for health and fitness. I'm a guy who likes to go to the gym, like the guy who gets to get the workout in. Well, if you know how passionate I am about health and fitness, you know why something like weightliftinghq.com was something that piqued my interest. And when I learned more about weightliftinghq.com and what they can do for fellow fitness and weightlifters, I was quite impressed. weightliftinghq.com is a local company right here in South Jersey that operates fully online, and they cater to weightlifters and fitness enthusiasts interested in working out from home. They offer high-end weightlifting and fitness equipment available to be delivered right to your home. So whether it's bench or squat racks, kettlebells, dumbbells, cardio and fitness machines, along with great accessories like heart rate sensors, fitness watches, resistance bands, and more, they can deliver it right to your home, and you cannot beat their local customer service and their incredibly competitive prices. So check them out right now, weightliftinghq.com, and use code RADIO10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. So whether you're someone who's trying to supplement your gym workout so you can get a little workout from home when you can't get to the gym, or you want to have a full at-home gym workout program so you don't have to go anywhere for your fitness routines as you get ready for 2021, You want to go to weightliftinghq.com, use the code radio10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. That's radio10 for 10% off at weightliftinghq.com. We'll talk more Eagles and NFL coming up next here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks again, Dave Weinberg, for joining us here on a Weinberg Wednesday. Our conversation about the Eagles and the Masters with Dave Weinberg is brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you. Visit them online at gmslaw.com. 609-403-0973 for the PlaySugarHouse.com text board, 609-403-0973. Get to your text in just a moment. I'm just still surprised of how the Eagles, and maybe I can chalk this entire year up to nobody's having a good day. Everyone's having a bad year, bad month, bad something like that. Because at some point, the way the Eagles have handled things and the way the whole year has gone, maybe we should just give everybody a pass at this point. But it's just hard for me to do so because it's just so frustrating the way things have gone about, right? It's so frustrating to hear people handle their business so inefficiently that I feel like at some point you just got to have the self-awareness to realize that you're just doing something wrong, right? Like you shouldn't have said something a certain way, or maybe there's a better way to do things. And it feels like some people they just don't get it. And it's just frustrating. Let's get to your text messages. 609-403-0973 is the text board to get on the conversation. Dan from EHT chimes in at 609-403-0973, says the problem with that debate between Foles and Wentz is it's so ridiculous. Doug didn't want to call his friend an idiot in public. I'm sure they're going to have a beer together at some point. Dan, it's interesting you mentioned the second point because it hasn't been talked about a lot except for I've seen here on 97.3 ESPN. But if you listen to the full answer of what Doug Pederson said to the first question, the initial question that was asked of him about the Brett Favre comments, listen to the very end of what Doug Pederson said.
I respect Brett's opinion. Yeah, we are friends, but I haven't talked to him, and he's entitled to that, and that's about it. I'll have a conversation with him off the record.
A little bit there, right there. I'll have a conversation with him off the record about it. So even Doug's telling you kind of like in a backhanded, and he smiled and had a big smile on his face when he said it. Even he's saying, Brett and I are going to have a conversation. So you're 100% right, Dan, in EHT. They're going to have a conversation. But you're right. And you're further right about Doug didn't want to call out his friend. Look, Doug and Brett have a long history together. And it's more than just Doug was his backup in Green Bay for almost a decade. It's the fact that, Doug and Brett had so much time off the field together as well. They went fishing together. They hung out together. They spent a lot of time. In fact, there's a famous or infamous, depending on, where you stand on Brett Favre, time when, Brett ran a play for Green Bay, and it's on NFL films, and Holmgren turns to him and says, what was that play? And he's like, I didn't call that play. He's like, oh, that was a play Doug and I talked about. Basically saying that Doug Pederson and him came up with a play by themselves. And they decided to run instead of listening to Holmgren. And boy, what is Holmgren going to do? He's going to be like, the dude's won 3 league MVPs. He won me a Super Bowl. Like, am I going to tell him to shut up and go away? No, of course not. But it's still the perplexed look on Holmgren's face. Like, I called a play. You didn't listen to me. And that's the history that Doug and Brett have, is this history of, writing plays together and hanging out and fishing and all this kind of stuff. So you're right, Dan, EHC. He doesn't want to call out his friend. But there's more to the debate between Foles and Wentz than just, it being ridiculous or valid or any of that kind of stuff. There is validity to it because there's numerous people around the entire football universe that talk about this kind of stuff. And it gets back to even something that Brandon Noble said today on the Sports Bash. Brandon Noble played defensive tackle in the league for many years, played for the Cowboys and for Washington. And he even brought up Nick Foles earlier today. Nobody asked about Nick Foles. Mike Gill and Hunter Brody were like, tell me about Nick Foles, Brandon. No, he brought it up himself. Take a listen.
Nick Foles wins a Super Bowl. That offense looked better when Nick Foles played. So I do think that there is a disconnect between the play calling and Carson Wentz and his skill set. And I don't know what that is. Like I was a defensive lineman. I smashed my head into things for a living. I don't understand all that on that side of the ball. But I do think that there is a disconnect between play calling and what Wentz does well. And I don't know how you fix that.
And that's somebody who played in the league. And he doesn't even have a fully answer for it. But he's telling you, look, when I saw Nick Foles, I saw one offense. Now I see Carson Wentz, I see another offense. And there's a disconnect here. And if he's seeing there's a disconnect, and you and I are watching the Eagles every week are seeing that there's issues with the offense, the Nick Foles stuff will never go away, as Dave Weinberg said. Because whether we like it or not, and, for all the times I'm hyper-aggressive here on the radio or on social media, and I call out the Nick Foles people. Listen, I do it partly in jest, but I also do it partly because I'm acknowledging that it's real. It's not fake. For Brett Favre to say it, for Brandon Noble to say it, and for other people to bring it up, there is a real thing here about the fact that the offense looked one way with Carson Wentz before he got injured, and then another way with Nick Foles under center, and then another way when Carson Wentz came back from his injury and finally started playing an entire season like he did last year. He played the full year last year, right? And he only got injured until the very end when he got the cheap shot in the back of the head from Jadeveon Clowney. So when you're talking about the Foles and the Wentz stuff, objectively, yes, Dan in the HT is right on the text board at 609-403-0973. It is ridiculous because objectively, when you're comparing Foles and Wentz, there's no comparison. Foles has very specific limitations. We've seen it here in Philadelphia. We saw it with him when he played for the Rams. We saw it with him in Jacksonville with the Jags. We saw it with him now with the Bears. He is not able to just do certain things. There are certain things that are limitations on his skill set. And those limitations don't exist for Carson Wentz. But as Dave Weinberg just said a few minutes ago right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, it's as if Wentz knows what he is capable of, and he tries to take advantage of those, for lack of a better term, benefits that he has, those advantages that he has. And it's almost like Wentz plays to those abilities at times instead of staying within the offense. As I said earlier, Tom Brady by some is considered the greatest of all time, okay? So if Tom Brady, who's the greatest of all time, or at least one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, spent a large portion of his career, not the majority of his career, but a huge chunk of his career basically being a game manager, managing the game, not letting the game get away from him, putting his team in a position to be successful, not having all these interceptions, these turnovers. If Tom Brady can learn how to do that at a very early age, when Wentz doesn't do that, it's very frustrating. And as Brandon Noble said, look, the offense looked one way with Foles and it looks another way with Wentz. And as he said, there's a disconnect between the play calling with Foles and the play calling with Wentz. And I don't know if that's 100% on Wentz. I don't know if it's 100% on Pederson. But Pederson doesn't help the conversation when he gets up there in front of the media and doesn't give a very specific answer, and then he gives an aggressive answer at the very end. Doug, you're not helping your cause. By the way, there's a second part to the Pederson answer that I didn't play earlier. This was right before they ended the press conference. Because after he gave this answer, this final part of the answer, the Eagles ended Doug's press conference earlier today. Take a listen.
It's my job to get Carson Wentz to play better, to do better, to help this football team win, as it is to get everybody else to play better. And so, again, I respect his opinion and his words. Those aren't mine. Please don't put words in my mouth or we're going to have a problem. And Carson's our guy. Bottom line, end of story.
And that's how the press conference ended today. Right after that, they said, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Coach. And then Coach signed off from the Zoom. Just to kind of paint the full picture there for you. Doug said it himself. He has to put Wentz in a position to be successful. And it's hard to tell if Pederson's not doing a good enough job to put Wentz in that position, or is the issue Wentz is not listening to the coaching being given to him, as we've brought up numerous times here on 97.3 ESPN. Adam Kaplan and Jeff Mosher have talked about this numerous times on their Inside the Birds podcast and at Football at 4 on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill and Hunter Brody. If I haven't heard it 5 times, I probably heard it 500 times at this point from both of them. Carson Wentz played his best when John DeFilippo was aggressively coaching him and being very hard on him. And there's obviously a huge difference between that style of coaching and what Wentz is now getting with Press Taylor and the current coaching staff. So Doug can do everything he can to put Wentz in a position to be successful. But if Wentz isn't listening, then it's opening the door for all of this criticism. There wouldn't be half of the criticism we have about Wentz from people like Brett Favre if Wentz didn't say and do the things that he says and does. By the way, one more cut from Brandon Nova earlier on the Sports Bash show on 97.3 ESPN.
Carson Wentz is a warrior, right? That guy goes out and plays, and he really does put it all on the field. But I think sometimes when you're a guy like that, you also push it too hard. You make a bad decision. You're not careless with the ball, but you're trying to make something happen. And that has definitely been a struggle for him this year.
Telling you, if Wentz tried to be a little bit more of a game manager and a little bit less of a hero, this team might have a win or two more. We're going to find out the final 8 games this season. How much has Wentz learned from his mistakes? Or is he just stubborn as the day is long? I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Hope you all have a great night. We'll be back tomorrow here on 97.3 ESPN.